Have you ever stopped to think about what happens when a country of 1.4 billion people suddenly decides to go on a diet? I'm not talking about for personal health, but for national security. We're going to dive into China's all-out war on food waste. And believe me, when a nation this huge changes its habits, the rest of the world is going to feel it.
It all really starts with this one. Just staggering number.
35 million tons. That is the amount of food wasted in China every single year. To put that into perspective, that's enough food to feed the entire population of a country like South Korea or Spain. This isn't just some abstract environmental problem, it has a massive human cost. So the big question is, how on earth did it get this bad?
Well, the answer is this really fascinating collision between the very, very old and the very, very new. We're talking about ancient cultural ideas slamming right into some pretty bizarre internet trends.
It's such a wild paradox, right? On one hand, you have this deep-seated tradition where being a good host means you order way, way more food than your guests could ever eat. The more food that's left over, the more generous you look. But then, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have the crazy rise of mukbang, these live streams where people get famous and are called big stomach kings for binge eating just mountains of food for an online audience. Two completely different reasons, but they both lead to the exact same incredibly wasteful outcome.
So with things like pandemics, trade wars, and extreme weather threatening food supplies, Beijing started looking at all this waste and seeing something much scarier than just a social problem. They saw it as a direct threat to national food security. And their response? It's been incredibly fast and incredibly forceful.
Okay, so their first shot was back in August 2020. President Xi launched this big Clean Plate campaign. It was all about raising awareness, encouraging people to be less wasteful, but without any real rules or penalties to back it up, it kind of just fizzled out. So less than a year later, the government shifted gears. They went from suggesting people change to forcing them to with a huge nationwide law. And this new law is no joke. It's really comprehensive. We're not talking about simple suggestions anymore. These are hard and fast rules, and they target pretty much everyone, from the person eating at the restaurant to the restaurant owner and even to the influencers online.
So the law basically hits the problem from three different angles. First up, if you're a diner and you leave a ton of food on your plate, the restaurant can actually charge you a disposal fee for it. Second, the restaurants themselves can get fined if they're caught encouraging their customers to overorder. And third, those big stomach king videos, yeah, those are now completely officially banned.
And let me tell you, these new rules have some serious teeth. Restaurants that are found to be consistently wasting huge amounts of food can get hit with fines up to 50,000 yuan. That's almost 8,000 US dollars. That's a pretty strong reason to change your ways. But believe it or not, that's not even the biggest fine. The biggest penalties are actually saved for the internet content creators. If you make and share these binge eating videos, you could be fined up to 100,000 yuan. We're talking almost $16,000. It just goes to show how seriously the government views the influence of these online trends as a major part of the problem.
But this whole crackdown isn't just about China making sure it can feed its own people. It's actually tied into one of the biggest challenges that the entire world is facing right now.
See, on a global scale, food waste is responsible for a whopping 8% of all greenhouse gas emissions. When all that food ends up in a landfill and starts to rot, it releases methane, which is an incredibly potent greenhouse gas. So by cracking down on its own food waste, China is also making a pretty significant move in the bigger fight against climate change. It lines up perfectly with their goal to be carbon neutral by 2060. At the end of the day, this quote from President Xi really gets to the heart of why this is happening. For the leadership in China, this isn't just a simple social campaign. It is a core part of their national strategy. In a world that feels more and more uncertain, being able to control your own food supply is one of the most important ways to maintain stability. So what we're left with is this incredibly powerful top-down solution to a massive problem. It involves regulating what people order, how much they're allowed to waste, and even what they watch online. It's designed to work for sure, but it is also incredibly intrusive. And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. When you're facing a genuine crisis, how much government control is too much?